Hey everybody, I have read your Part 1 quality papers and have provided feedback for you. It is so important that you read the feedback from Part 1 and plan to make changes for Part 2. I don't want you to rewrite your paper. But what you do need to do is find the gaps that were in your paper, if there were any, um, problems with areas that weren't well covered or needing additional information. Jot yourself some notes because you're going to want the best version of the concepts in your part 1 to be applied to part 2. So you do need to go back through and figure out where your gaps were in part 1 so that your background information and the concepts that you're going to introduce your work in part 2 are on point. So make sure you go back in and read that. Interestingly, normally I get a huge variety of quality topics. This time there were lots and lots of people focusing on falls. Interestingly, there were falls in different areas, which was cool. Wherever you were on the quality spectrum, whatever your focus area was, make sure that you really are thinking about first, what's your current process? What are you currently doing to address your quality issue? And be clear about what your current efforts are. Because part 2 is not for you to further explain your current efforts. Part 2 is for you to do a deep dive into the literature related to your quality issue and to find a couple of recommended innovative practice changes that would positively impact your quality issue. So you're going to take what's already being done and explain that in the beginning, and then you're going to go into the innovative recommendations you have, and they're going to be based on evidence-based practice that's published in the literature. So make sure that as you approach part 2 that you're clear-minded about what that looks like and that you are looking at not just restating what currently is being done, but finding some sort of recommendation for improving your current way you're addressing your quality issue. And you do need to be in the literature. So I would start first, review the feedback you have from part 1, figure if you have any tweaks and adjustments you need to make, and then start thinking about how can we do this better? How can we approach my quality issue that would be different, that would be innovative, innovative being the recommendation, and what could I come up with that would be valuable? So that's the next step for part 2. There's some APA things I want to draw your attention to. There were several of you that struggled with line spacing. We know that APA requires double line spacing. Sometimes in Microsoft Word, there's a default setting that changes the space that occurs before and after your paragraph. It is something that if you don't know it's there, you'll miss it. I'm going to attach a little short, I think it's about 2 minutes, video on where you can find the paragraph button and how you go about fixing your line spacing issue. This is important for you to do because first, it's APA required, and second, because it changes the spacing and the length of your paper if you have all this extra spacing in between your paragraphs. So that needs to be addressed. The other thing to remind you that in all of your articles, you should have a DOI, or if a DOI is not available, a URL where you located the article in the databases. I'm going to encourage you that if you go in and you locate an article and it doesn't have a DOI, I want you to go back and make sure that the search parameters you used in finding that article made sure that it is a peer-reviewed, scholarly, recent article. DOIs have been more and more prevalent over the last 10 years. 15 years it was a good idea but not required. If you're dealing with a current article that's been published in the last couple of years and there's not a DOI, you want to question yourself about the source. Is it really a scholarly source? DOIs are basically the way we digitally locate an article that is considered scholarly and professional. That does not mean that you won't come across articles without a DOI that may still have scholarly value. Some of our international journals are not up with the DOI technology, but I do want you to pause and ask yourself, am I using the best source? If you're sure and it still doesn't have a DOI, you're going to copy the URL. You're going to go into the Jerry Falwell Library or whatever database you're using. You're going to copy, click, pull in that URL, which is that web address of where you locate the article, and you're going to put that in your reference list. When you do that, you're going to find that there's about 5 or 6 lines of encrypted coding. You're going to back out, just delete all the way up to where you can find the search engine. Normally a line or two will get you there. There is really no precise way to do this. APA has been pretty quiet on the topic. They just want you to tell them from a formatting standpoint, where'd you find this stuff? The DOI is the best way to do that. If not, at least tell us, give us a hyperlink of the database and the search engine and then the database that you use to find it. So if you copy the web address and then you delete all of the extra verbiage up until you get back into where the primary locators are, then you're going to be good. There's not really a wrong way to do that except to not do it or to leave all 6 or 7 lines of URL address. It just gets messy. The other thing I want to remind you, every paper that is a scholarly paper that is APA formatted should have an introductory paragraph and a conclusion paragraph. It is a sandwich in how you tell someone at the beginning of your paper, this is what my paper is going to be about, these are the main themes, and this is what you can expect to find in the following pages. Your conclusion is a restatement of your introduction. This is what I said, this is why it's relevant, and you wrap everything up by giving a summary of what you've covered in your paper. These are important writing cues that guide your reader as well as your own writing and your own thinking. So be sure that you create an introductory paragraph and a conclusion paragraph. I do want to remind you that the first paragraph is in any paper is intended to be an introduction. It's understood that it is an introduction. So your paper should start with a level 1 heading, preferably the name of the paper, and then go right into the introduction content. Basically, you're going to give the level 1 heading, and then you're going to cover your introduction. You do not need a level heading telling your reader that it is an introduction. That's understood, okay? Okay, I think that is it. Oh, one other thing. If you are in your paper as you're writing information, if you are citing data or percentages or facts, it is important that you use a scholarly support to cite it. If you make a generalized statement, so if you made the statement, there's a shortage in nursing, that is a commonly understood fact when a nurse is reading the paper. You don't need to cite that or support that. But if you say 1 in every 20 new nurses will leave their current practice before the end of the year, period. That's a fact, and that's a pretty specific fact. That needs a citation and then a reference in your reference paper. You want to avoid making generalizations that don't actually give specific information, but if you do give specific information, then you need to give a scholarly citation and a reference to support the facts that you've given. Good scholarly papers have lots of facts. They have lots of data. So get into the mindset of what does that look like. Okay, I think I have covered everything. Let's talk briefly about this week's assignment. You have got reflective exercise 1. It's 2 parts. You're going to have a Word document and a PowerPoint document. Those 2 files are going to be loaded into Blackboard at the same time. Blackboard will let you load lots and lots of files. I'm asking you to do 2. One is a Word and one is a PowerPoint. The Word document is a reflective exercise of you talking about 1 to 2 things that you have seen from a change in innovation since you've started your practice. That's it. Part 2 is a PowerPoint encouraging your team to participate in innovation. Want to remind you that when you do a PowerPoint, you need to think about your audience. Your PowerPoint should be aesthetic. It should be creative. It should be interesting. You need to engage your viewer into your topic and keep them interested. The use of appropriate pictures, graphs, and charts are professional and expected. It keeps your audience engaged. And I do want you to think not just about the concept of encouraging innovation and the scholarly support you're going to give for encouraging innovation, but the next step is going to be making sure that how you have packaged it is aesthetic and appealing to your audience. Both of those things are pretty important. So you're going to pull all those concepts together, you're going to put them in a PowerPoint, and you're going to load it. Someone asked on the Ask the Professor link kind of how many slides. A lot of it's just personal choice. I would suggest, that it's been my experience, that 10 to 12 slides normally get the job done. Think about how long are you going to have your audience engaged. 1 minute per slide is normally what we think. after 10 minutes, people stop listening. So 10 to 12 is a good estimate. If you're a few under, a few over, it's not a big deal. I'm not counting slides as well as I'm counting or assessing. Have you addressed the topic of innovation in a persuasive manner? That's your goal here. And think about where you're practicing. Who would your audience really be? And think about that and approach it from that angle. Okay, I am done. If you guys if you all have questions or concerns, know that I'm here. I know that this sometimes, especially in the summer, things just feel wonky. It's like we really should not be in school, but we're in school. Don't know that you're not by yourself. I'm happy to address any questions. Remember to ask the professor link for general questions, things that other people may be interested in the answer to. Send me a personal email with anything personal related to your own experience, your own questions, especially grades or guiding your work. I'm happy to address either. Just don't do both because then I get confused. I hope you guys have a great rest of the week. Touch base with questions or concerns. Take care.